this started. For those of you who don't know me, as I was just introduced, my name is Bryan Boulanger. I started here in 2012, and at that time I looked like the guy who's on the flyer. So since then I've had a couple facial changes. Every other couple months I'll grow a beard or my hair out. But I currently serve as the chair for the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering on campus. And for the past 2 years I've been involved in various projects with different groups across the United States looking at efforts to preserve and protect the natural night sky as a cultural, ecological, and scientific resource. I've been privileged to share in this fashion as they make smoothies with students and several faculty members from around campus, some of which are here today. And I wanted to start by thanking them for the time, the effort, and the insight they've shared in what's really become a combined vision. And the vision as it's developed is, how do you go about sharing the natural night sky with people? And I hope after this talk you actually take an opportunity, probably not tonight, but you take an opportunity to go and try to find the natural night sky. Because amazing things will happen when you do. Finding the natural night sky, though, will not be that easy anymore. But it'll be worth it. Because what you see outside here in Ohio is just a partial reality of what the night sky is today. And it's a partial reality we've created from ourselves over the past 4 decades. Somehow we've managed to completely lose a resource that's really the only shared resource that we have as humanity. And sadly, over time, we haven't even noticed. The resource is so critical that entire social structures, civilizations, and actually every single cell in your body receives signals from the natural cycling of this resource that then has an impact. My realization of what's gone actually happened in October 2007. Myself and 2 friends traveled out to far west Texas to Guadalupe Mountains National Park, where we planned to go hiking and climbing. We arrived there late one night after dark, and this park is 100 miles from the nearest settlement. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. And we had planned to arrive in the park and camp in the campground. But when we got there, the campground sign said, full. We didn't have any other options, so we did the only thing that we could figure out. We snuck into the campground. We grabbed just our sleeping bags so we wouldn't be caught. We didn't have any way to pay for it because the station was closed. And so we snuck down into the campground with just our sleeping bags and found a location far from other people, prayed that we weren't the warmest thing that a rattlesnake or a scorpion could find that night, and then settled into our sleeping bags, camping for a night in the open desert. And as we settled into our sleeping bags, this is a snapshot of what I saw. Now you can take this snapshot and spread it across the whole sky. I'm fairly good at finding constellations, but I couldn't find my way around the sky even if I tried in the hours that I stayed there looking up. But perhaps you recognize the Milky Way? Some of you. We haven't seen the Milky Way in Ohio in about 2 decades, not easily at least. And in fact, today, 80% of Americans can't see the Milky Way from their homes. And as I took in this view, I immediately thought, what have we done? The connection I made is the fact that I'm a civil and environmental engineer. I teach people routinely about how to design and build civil engineering infrastructure. It's this infrastructure that's caused the light pollution, which is why we can't see anything that looks like this today in Ohio. And to be honest, this is a picture taken with a camera that has a much better photoreceptor than the cells in your eyes. So this picture, while it's real, this represents what is there. It's also sort of a partial reality. But what can we see if you take the time to go find it? This is a simulated image. This image is provided by Stellarium. It shows what your eye could see under kind of an ideal conditions. This was somewhat reminiscent of what my eyes actually saw that night in West Texas. There's around 4,500 stars that you could see at night under ideal conditions. Added planets, nebulas, and other satellites, and the night sky really fills up very quickly. And so even at a quick glance, this image is different than what you would see. Around here in Ohio, what we see looks more like this. This is the same image in the previous slide, but what we've done is we overlaid what light pollution looks like in any major city in Ohio, such as Cleveland or Columbus or Cincinnati. This is closer to the reality that we experience in our night sky today. So why? Why does this occur? Well, because the artificial sources of light scatter into the atmosphere. They block the natural light that comes through our atmosphere, and as a result, there are consequences. And really, to me, this impact is based upon one thing and one thing alone, and it's poor exterior lighting design. This image is an interesting image to me, and I've come to really appreciate it as a learning opportunity. This shows the night sky before and during the 2003 blackout of the East Coast. Some of you may remember that, some of you might not, but it was pretty interesting that the entire seaboard went out. It went black. This picture hints at our current lighting design, but also hints at some of the impacts and some of the opportunities. When we first started providing light at night, it was to dump electricity from the grid to other uses at night because we couldn't quite regulate or control the electric flow well at power plants at that time. Flash forward today, that's not necessarily the case. The reason why we still continue to provide that light at night is largely because of safety. We feel that there is a relationship and a mindset that if we can see, we're safer. And there's been a lot of research to date that shows that's not necessarily the case, but we continue this development trend because the two are so tightly bound in our imaginations and our society. So as a result, we continue to install fixtures that are largely no longer appropriate, that have older technologies than what we could do, and we continue to contribute to an issue of light pollution. And we now know that there are consequences. Each year, economics, we spend $3 billion additional dollars lighting the night sky. That's the most latest estimate. From lighting light that's not necessary or pointed in the completely wrong direction. You can walk around campus and see those losses. We also, even if we can aim light in the right direction, we also have impacts on ecology. 70%, approximately 70% of mammals are nocturnal. So what do you think happens to a nocturnal mammal when you begin to introduce artificial light into its living environment? Well, it turns out there's effects on species reproduction, predation, sleep-wake cycles, not to mention larger habitat effects. And I referenced earlier that humans are not immune either. Every single cell in our body is connected to a normal biological clock or a circadian rhythm. That circadian rhythm is tied to melatonin, which is a chemical our bodies produce based upon diminishing levels of light in our environment. Whether it's indoor light or outdoor light, as we're exposed to artificial light and we're not supposed to be, it impacts the way our own physiology works, including areas such as hormone production, our own sleep-wake cycling, and then even cellular respiration. We now know that there are consequences. Science just this past month published a whole entire volume on consequences of artificial light from circadian rhythms. So there's cancer ties, and we have to do a better job of understanding what the impacts are. So if we want to begin not only to understand the impacts, but also to reverse some of these unintended consequences, we have a long way to go. This is a slide that shows light pollution in the United States since the 1950s. It shows the past 60 years, but it also reaches out to what could be the future, a future that I'd rather not have. And so how do we begin to reverse this scenario? First, we need to reconnect folks with the natural night sky through talks like this. I'm glad you're all here. Thank you. Second, we need to think about how do we really protect natural dark areas that currently exist today so that this light scatter doesn't continue to move. And third, we really need to think about lighting design in order to regain the ground that we've lost. We need to start moving towards better lighting. Fully shielded fixtures that doesn't allow any light to escape up. Lamp types that are appropriate for their amount of light they provide, the color of light they provide, and also the amount of energy they use. And we can also do a lot with controls today that we couldn't do before. So we can light this entire campus. So tonight, when there's a snow cover on the ground, you have a lot of backscatter from the light that's coming down. We should be able to adjust the lighting levels to not provide as much light. this white blanket is going to bounce a lot of light back upwards, and then anything else we provide isn't necessary. But if we first want to start to reverse this process, we need to understand what our own impacts are on the resource and the ways that we contribute to light pollution. And then we need to get involved. So in terms of getting involved, this past 2 years, we've gotten involved by engaging the Park Service to help them make decisions about their lighting. And we've worked on projects throughout the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which is one of the last remaining dark areas in the Northwest. We worked with a group of students from ONU to inventory this past summer, and some faculty, to inventory all of Yellowstone's exterior lighting fixtures, and we'll soon begin to help them redesign and retrofit the fixtures that they have for future protection of a night sky resource. But why Yellowstone? Yellowstone was the nation's first national park, and it's really a symbol of what people who are looking towards the future can dream of. The protection efforts that were created to preserve Yellowstone offer us an opportunity to do the same thing with the natural night sky. The skies are amazing there. As you can see, this is West Thumb Geyser Basin. Again, it's a photograph, but it shows you what you can see. And so that's where we started, by helping the park take information that they're going to be needing to become an international dark sky park. ONU students helped inventory 5,200 light fixtures over 2.2 million acres. Spent just under 4 weeks in the park altogether, and it was a wonderful 4 weeks. Our efforts in Yellowstone have led to development of tools that we and others are now using in Grand Teton National Park, throughout communities and parks in southern Utah, and even starting soon here at Ada and hopefully on campus. We can take these tools and model what light pollution looks like on the ground, and even almost in 3 dimensions. That's where we're headed. We have all the data. We can run complex energy analysis to allow the partners that we're working with to understand what their rate of return would be if they changed all of their fixtures over to directional LED-based lighting. So we can help them make decisions. So recently I made another realization, and I realized that while we might not all be able to travel to Yellowstone to understand and to appreciate the natural night sky there, we can begin to work locally. And when we do so, from our local efforts, we can begin to expand the darkness in this map together. We can look at better lighting and better lighting technology so that what's the accepted norm on the left here becomes a better opportunity on the right. We don't have to allow this to be our future, even if it's our present. Because someday, I'm hopeful that my kids might be able to be in Ohio and at a quiet corner not too far from my house, they'd be able to have the same type of experience that I've had so far from home. With that, I offer you guys an opportunity at some point in the distant future, go find the natural night sky. Spend some time gazing up at it, reflect upon what you've seen, and it'll change you. And in that process, they'll change this outcome. Thank you. Are we supposed to take questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I totally get for the national park, you would like to see all the skies and you would like to reverse the light pollution. But how about some big cities? People just want to get out to see the amazing light during nighttime, right?
How about the major cities? So right now, the state of Utah understands that night skies are an economic resource. The value over the next 10 years of spending for people to go on astrotourism in Utah is $2.25 billion. So even in a city as big as Salt Lake, there's efforts currently underway to look at lighting codes, to look at existing design retrofits, to be able to put in and implement almost caps on lighting for the future. So yeah, ideally in the future, you won't have to leave in order to experience something that until the past 4 generations, everyone could have experienced, even in our major cities. Yes?
How bad is this problem worldwide?
How bad is the problem worldwide? Europe is really well lit on the sky map. Population density is higher. There are still some beautiful areas of darkness located where people aren't. But oil production, that puts a very visible light into the night sky. Even in areas that you wouldn't think about, shipping channels are well lit, not only into the night sky, but down into the water column that has impacts on aquatic life. So it's going to continue to be a growing problem as other areas rapidly urbanize. Any other questions?
What would be the cost to retrofit campus?
The cost to retrofit campus, I don't know because we're not there quite yet. I do understand we've engaged with PlugSmart to look at lighting broadly on campus, both internally and perhaps outside. I have requested that the new engineering building, when it gets built, will be built with great fixtures on the outside so that we can keep that part of campus appropriately dark. The work that we've done in Yellowstone, it costs them, just energy costs, because service costs are a little bit different, but it's costing them about $100,000 a year to light the park. And that park's only on roughly for 5 months to 6 months out of the year. Most of it goes dark. They actually take entire villages off because it's cold and snowing. I figure that for most of the park, it's a year to a year and a half return on investment if they change over their fixtures. The one piece that I don't have a good grip on right now is labor costs. So that's what we're trying to work on and understand. What are the labor costs associated with the lighting? But most of the lighting, they have 100 years worth of bad design practices in different stages. So simple things like changing out existing light bulbs with LEDs that are fully shielded and only can shine light in one direction. As long as they're within the right color temperature, which tells you the color feeling or how light looks to you visually, then it's going to be okay there. We want to keep a historic charm in a lot of their buildings, and so that replicates candlelight in many ways. So bright white LEDs are probably not appropriate, but the new technologies coming up could be. Thank you.